Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome. Can we start?
Hello.
Can we start? Hello, can we start? Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome you all to the Cambridge City Council Housing Scrutiny Committee meeting. My name is Councillor Titala Varki, and I am the chair of this committee meeting taking place at 5:30 p.m. on 14th March 2023. Please can those present in the council chamber note that everything on your desk, including your laptop screen, could be broadcasted at some point. If you are following the team meeting here in the chamber on your laptop, your audio, microphone, and camera must be switched off. The camera within the chamber follows the microphone being switched on, so those in the chamber are requested to wait a couple of seconds before speaking to allow the camera to catch up. If the fire alarm sounds, please follow the officers who will leave the chamber and exit the building via Peace Hill staircase and exit. Do not use the lift. Please can those be participating in the team meeting indicate that you wish to speak via the chat column. Please do not use the chat column for any other purpose. Please ensure that you have switched off or silenced any other devices you have so that they do not interrupt proceedings. When you are invited to address the meeting, please make sure your microphone is switched on. When you finish addressing the committee, please turn off your microphone immediately. Speak slowly and clearly, and please do not talk over or interrupt anyone. I will roll call the councillors alphabetically by surname to ensure they are present. We have received apologies from Councillor Gothroput and Councillor Sam Carling is attending as alternate. And Councillor Sarah Begent is on her way, and she will be joining us soon. Please advise if you know of any apologies from other councillors. Are you present? Sarah Begent, she is not here. She will be joining us. Councillor Carling? Councillor Holloway?
Present.
Councillor Howard? Councillor Lee?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Porrer?
Present, Chair.
Councillor Pons?
Present, Chair.
Councillor Robertson?
Present.
Thank you. And finally, the Executive Councillor for Housing, Councillor Jerry Baird?
Present.
Thank you. I will now roll call the tenant and leaseholders representative alphabetically by surname. We have received apologies from Lulu Agate and Colin Stevens. Are you present? Christabella Amitiai? And Diana Best?
Present, Chair.
Manti Powell Hardy?
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Diana Mins?
Present, Chair.
Thank you. The officers permanently present throughout this meeting are Director of Neighborhood and Communities, Jane Wilson, Director of Enterprise and Sustainable Development, Fiona Barron, Committee Manager, Sarah Steed, Meeting Producer, Boris Herzog. Other officers will join us throughout the course of the meeting, either in person or virtually by Microsoft Teams, and I will introduce them at the start of the relevant agenda item. Copies of the agenda can be found on the City Council's website under Committee Meetings and Minutes and Agenda. Please try and refer to specific page numbers when the agenda, if you are referring to a specific paragraph. Meeting procedure: the committee will receive an oral presentation from officers. Members of the committee will then discuss the report and vote on the recommendations. Tenant and leaseholders representative will participate in the debate on all agenda items, but may only vote on items in part 1 of the agenda. Part 1 of the meeting will be chaired by the tenant leaseholder representative. I will then chair part 2 of the agenda. Following the vote of committee, the executive councillor will be asked if they agree the decision. Moving to the agenda item 2, please could the committee members advise if they have any declarations of interest and identify which agenda item their declaration relates to. Sorry.
Just to note that for the item on Hanover and Princes Court, I'm ward councillor and I'm also on planning committee, so my comments tonight won't fetter my discretion on planning. It will be purely relating to the housing revenue account aspects of it. Thanks.
Yes, please.
In a similar fashion, if I'm present at planning committee, or if this comes forward to planning committee at that time, I also wish to remain unfettered.
Just in case, for item 7, the modular housing is either ward councillor for that ward.
Are there any other declaration of interest? January 2023 meeting have been submitted to this meeting for approval. If there are any concerns, please could members raise them now, otherwise they shall be approved as the correct record. Any concerns? It's deemed to be approved. Agenda item 4, public questions. We have 3 public speakers registered. Please, can I remind the speakers that they have 3 minutes to speak and with an additional 2 minutes for follow-up questions. The committee manager will advise when you reach 3 minutes. Please, can the committee manager read a statement on behalf of the first public speaker, Mr. John Clark?
No, I haven't received a statement, so I can't read one out for that particular speaker.
Since we have not received a statement from Mr. John Clark, I go to the second public speaker. Please, can I invite Dr. Chiodo to speak? Apologies if I misspelled. Wrongly pronounced. So,
Afternoon, councillors. My name is Dr. Maurice Kyodo. I'm a resident of Eakin Road, here to speak on agenda item 9. I speak for Save Eakin Road, a community group of over 60 people from Eakin Road. I last addressed you here on the 22nd of September regarding the Eakin Road project. To summarise my group's position, once again, we continue to oppose any proposals to demolish our estate, and we continue to urge the council to instead investigate and pursue an upgrade and refurbish plan. Councillors, I begin with an update on the evolution of affairs on Eakin Road since September. Residents have received almost no progress updates on this project. There has been no further consultation or surveying of residents. There has been only one council-run liaison group meeting in that time. The mental health of residents is deteriorating rapidly as a result of the continuing uncertainty. In short, nothing much has progressed. Councillors, in September we asked for a slowing down of the process, not a complete blackout. We have not been given any timeline for the consultation process. We do not know what is coming nor when it will come. It is not clear who we can ask for further information. The council officers we do manage to speak to have no answers for us. In short, we're completely in the dark. Councillors, we have read agenda item 8 of this meeting. We note Princess and Hanover Courts are slightly smaller than Eakin Road. 3 main options were presented there: essential refurbishment, full refurbishment, and redevelopment. And that all 3 options have a very long completion time frame of 4 years. Any project on Eakin Road might take a similar, if not longer, time frame. In short, this will not be a quick project. Councillors, in light of all this, we propose the following interim approach to address the month-to-month uncertainty faced by residents. 1, that the council present a consultation timeline to residents, explaining what the next consultation steps will be and when they will happen. 2, that the council give an assurance that no final decision will be taken until summer 2024 or later. And 3, that the council give an assurance that, whatever and whenever the decision, no resident will be required to vacate their property for at least 12 months following the decision date. Councillors, we believe this is the only approach that would stabilise the situation on Eakin Road. It gives residents some certainty and allows them to plan for life in the short term. It gives the council ample time to conduct a full and thorough consultation. It is open-ended and the council is not committing to any deadlines. We proposed it to your officers 3 weeks ago, but are yet to hear a reply. Councillors, we understand that the Eakin Road project is a complicated one and that the investigation and consultation process will take time to complete properly. But we also know the damage this process is doing to the mental health and life stability of the residents. We ask you to act now to stabilise the situation for all concerned. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Dr. Kyodo. I've been asked on behalf of Executive Councillor to respond to your public question. As ever, thank you for your questions and for all of the submissions that you make on behalf of the group. The Council is very well aware that when we are dealing with proposals for a site like this, it does create uncertainty. We do our best to come in early and work with all the residents, but therefore it does create that uncertainty. And clearly, when we came in September and then agreed to set up the liaison group, we also responded to a huge amount of feedback from all residents. At that liaison group in December, we talked about timelines. We did speak about the sorts of period of time it might take to review the options, to then move forward to any potential high-level decision which would come to committee. We talked about what would then happen in terms of design and how long that might take. And we also talked about how what would then happen in terms of any more detailed design scheme and also obviously a planning application process before even there was a final decision to go ahead. We have spent a lot of time, in particular housing advice and our repairs response team manager has spent a lot of time out at Eakin Road since the liaison group in December, listening to further feedback and addressing the immediate needs of the residents there around repairs in particular and other issues. I appreciate that it does feel as though there's still uncertainty about the longer term development. However, at that meeting, we were very clear that in order to listen to the feedback and go back and review all of the options that we wish to look at, it would take time, and we agreed that the terms of reference for those liaison groups would be on a quarterly basis and that it would be unusual for us to be able to give much update in between those because of the work going on underneath. We have put everything, including the minutes, up on the website. You have submitted a number of email communications which included a lot of points. I have responded to all of those, saying to you that some of them we couldn't answer now. And I very specifically responded to the requirement for the timeline, which in December, I believe we said we would bring back at the next meeting, which is on Thursday night. And I responded to you on the 3rd of March saying we would discuss the timeline on the 3rd of March, on Thursday night at the next liaison group meeting. And that effectively what we wanted to do was to go through the review of the different options we are now looking through with all the residents at the liaison group, explain what impact each of those may have, what constraints they have, what impact they might have on a timeline, and to be able to go through a high-level timeline as far as we can. Depending upon which options might be taken forward and what the residents think about the options that we will be suggesting that we are reviewing on Thursday night, will have an impact on what the next stage is, and therefore when it's likely that we might come back with any sort of high-level decision even to a committee. And obviously there will be a process after that. So what I would request, and I'm happy if the Exec Councillor wants to do anything more, I would suggest that we come to residents, all the residents on Thursday night at the liaison group. We talk through this, we bring the high-level timeline as we've discussed, but we also talk about the impact on it by going through each of the options that we're currently reviewing. I appreciate that what we can't do, probably at this moment in time, is to give an absolutely firm guarantee, but we want to absolutely make sure that all of the residents are engaged through the liaison group and any other feedback, any other meetings we attend, the whole way through this process, so they understand exactly what we'll be doing between each meeting and how that might impact on the timeline and when each stage is likely to happen, as far as we can at this stage. And I'd like to make sure that we take all the residents through that with us on Thursday and continue to engage with them. Thank you.
May I ask, do you have a supplementary question or a supplementary statement? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bryant. We understand that committing to timelines is hard because this is a complicated project. What we're asking at this stage are lower bounds. Okay? It's extraordinarily unsettling to live month to month not knowing what's coming and where it's coming from and what it's going to look like. So what we're asking at this stage is to hear from the council something along the lines of, well, we know this is hard. We know it'll take time. So we're going to promise that we're not going to make a decision before a certain time because it is so hard. We're not going to make you move before a certain time because this is so complicated and because this is not an easy process. This is the sort of reassurance we want so that we can plan. We don't know what the next thing is going to be. The liaison group happens every 3 months. We don't know what's coming on Thursday. Thank you for a rough outline, but we don't know what that's going to be. We just want a little bit of certainty. It is somewhat torturous to get up every morning knowing what's going to come from the council tomorrow. What's going to come from the officers? What are they going to tell us? Does it mean we have 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 1 month? That uncertainty is extraordinarily distressing for every single resident on Eakin Road, whether they want to remain or whether they want to go. That's universal. All we're asking is for the council to give a commitment to a lower bound for how long this will take so that we can plan. We can do something like plan a holiday away, plan a birthday party. At the moment, we can't plan birthday parties for our children because we don't know whether we'll still be here when they have the birthday. That's the sentiment. That's what we feel on Eakin Road. Just give us a lower bound so we know, okay, you won't have to do anything before this date. Because at the moment, this is toxic for every single person on the street. This is how we feel as residents. Can you please acknowledge that this would actually help us and it's something you could provide? It's not a commitment to finish by a certain date. It's a commitment to not do work by a certain date. This is what we're requesting from you, so that we have some certainty in our lives. It's hard enough knowing that there might be a wrecking ball coming through our window. We never know when the ball's coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Executive Councillor Jerry Bird to respond.
Thank you for that. I can assure you that we'll do everything possible to make sure all the residents know exactly what's going on when we know what's going on. There's no way we want to upset the residents. We don't want to cause any problems with their mental health. And I think the best thing is to have the liaison group meeting on Thursday, see how that goes. Then officers will update you as soon as we've got an update. We haven't even got a design yet. So we're just putting out saying what we would like to do or look at to do around where you live in Eakin Road. Okay? And please do not worry, we will look after you. Have the birthday parties. You won't be suddenly thrown out of your house. We'd have to give you plenty of notice. And we're not even that near. So once we get to that part where we're looking at design, then again we'll have another big consultation to show you the designs that may be an option. Not definite, but maybe an option. So I hope that helps you. Please go back and tell the residents that we do not want them worrying. We do care for them. Okay. Thank you.
Speaker, David Prentice. Sorry, maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong.
Here is the issue I wanted to raise. I cite my own circumstances. I've been a resident leaseholder here for 30 odd years. I do not question the council's valuation put on my home, but it's nothing near other neighbouring properties off the estate. I'll try to exercise the right to return. I'll need a home to be genuinely affordable. As a pensioner, I can neither raise a new mortgage nor take on a costly part-buy, part-rent option. Will the committee approve compulsory purchase to remove leaseholders?
Thank you, Chair. With your permission, yes. Just to respond to this, we have been working very closely with the residents of Hanover and Princess, both the tenants and the leaseholders, and we're aware of these concerns. We've had, in fact, contact with 114 of the residents out of 127. It's a very high level of contact we've managed to have. If the recommendations are accepted later on, and of course there's the debate on that report to come, need potentially to compulsory purchase flats within the development. We always try to proceed by agreement first, and that's what we will try and do and have been doing. Quite a number have returned their flats, sold their flats back to the council already, and others are in discussions with us about that. But obviously, as we know from other schemes, if we have to compulsory purchase some of the flats to get the whole scheme to happen, so we will have to do that. We adopted a regeneration policy back in September 21 at the Housing Scrutiny Committee then. And so we follow that. That sets out provisions for support, for compensation to people in accordance with the guidelines, and also indicates other ways in which we might be able to help people in terms of things like equity shares if they want to return but can't afford to. We do intend to maintain the right to return. The questioner is right to raise the question of the affordability of that for individuals. That's why we have these provisions in the policy which will involve discussion with the residents concerned about how this would affect them and what option might work best for them. The most important thing is that we do this very much on a personal case-by-case basis, working very closely with people. We've done this on a number of estates around the city now, including some of the higher value areas of the city. And so we have quite a lot of experience of doing this and a track record of being able to do this successfully. We haven't yet had to, as it were, forcibly evict anybody from their home as a result of this process. We've managed to work things out with people through the process we go through, working with them personally. Thank you.
Since we do not have a supplementary question, that concludes this agenda item. Now, please, can I invite Dan Amins, the tenants and leaseholder representative, to chair part one of the meeting.
Thank you. We're now going to go on to agenda item 5, which is the estates and facilities compliance data. So could the property compliance and risk manager introduce this item? That's Ren Barnard.
Good evening, everybody. This is a joint effort by myself and Lynn Thomas as well. So the latter part of the report, Lynn will interject and provide an update on the condensation damp mold processes. So
could you speak up a little, please? Sorry to override you on that. Could you speak up a bit if that's possible, or do whatever you do your end, yeah?
I'll just turn it up a little bit, see if this works. Is that better? Is that better? Hello, can you hear me okay? Is that better?
Please go on.
Okay. Evening, everybody. Apologies for the problem and the volume. I just turned it up a little bit. So this is a joint effort by myself and Lynn. So Lynn will support the part 6 of the report with the damp and condensation mold update, and I'll just start us off with the compliance elements that we normally report on. We are still in the process of consolidating the electrical installation certification and condition report information. Out of the total of 7,740 records, we are approaching 7,724 to be turned as live in the system, and that will then result in the compliance status. So at the next meeting, we will have a figure that we can report on. So that is a positive, and we've been working continuously to get that information reviewed to make sure that it is correct going into the new contract with the new contractor. Then on the gas safety element, so this report was delivered on the 10th of February, and I've reported 11 properties out of compliance at that time. But in total, while we reviewed our gain entry procedure, we had 26 properties total out of compliance from end to end. So at the time of the report, it was 11. In total, it was 26. And all we wanted to ensure is that our processes are still correct and it remains correct, and also that it is enforceable and we are following the correct processes ourselves in terms of notification for the annual inspection and safety check. So we've returned back to 100% compliance. So it was only for a brief period while we reviewed that process. So just to let you all know on that. On fire safety, the fire door inspection program is working through a list of 3,009 identified doors at the moment. So we've had successes. We're up to about 50% of the access rates for inspection, but also we do have the difficult partners trying to gain access to some of the rest. So, and then also in addition to that, we have the Kingsway fire alarm process, which is the fire alarm is installed and we're engaging with the contractor that installed it about cause and effect. And the next step is to liaise with tenants with regards to how this alarm works while we do the compartmentation, which has already started, and we're just trying to tie those two together so it works in tandem. The fire risk assessment program is also a success for us. We've delivered over 423 risk assessments with over 2,366 risk assessment actions alone within our housing stock. So there's quite a bit of work to do. The quality of the assessments has been really good, and we are working assessing those and getting a program ready to address those. Legionella and water hygiene, we remain compliant, so there's no additional issues there. I've already provided the update on the electrical installation certificate reporting. Passenger lifts, we had at the time of the report no lifts out of compliance. They are still 100%, but we have a few maintenance issues with one at Hanover Court with some maintenance reported there that we're looking at the moment, but it's still in working order. And then also on the asbestos management, we have done some more testing today on the MRI Orchard data loading element to make sure that we can push information seamlessly into the system. That is appearing to be working really well. So we're quite excited at having that next step and getting more information into the system so we can move on to sharing it as the next phase. Moving on to the dashboard. So the dashboard is pretty much what I've just said. We've had a few properties out of compliance on gas, but we're back to 100% as of today. There's no properties out of compliance. We are continually monitoring the progress of that contract as it sort of establishes itself. It's been challenging so far. And then also on the electrical bits, we will have some information for the next meeting. And then also the fire risk assessment program 100% complete. And then I'll hand over to Lynn. Thank you.
Thank you, Ren. So I'm giving you an update on section 6 of the report, which is our work around condensation, mould and damp. This was a shorter update on the longer detail that I provided you with in January. At the time of writing the report, we'd received 175 contacts through our dedicated email address, of which 151 had been surveyed. So that was the numbers at the time of writing the report on the 10th of February. We've now had 212 contacts and we only have 7 surveys to complete after this week. So we have seen a slow of the number of contacts that are coming through at the moment, and we have been able to resource the surveys sufficiently. So we spoke in the third paragraph of my report about a letter that we are developing to send out to the other properties within the roads where we've had the most contacts. I propose to share this letter with the councillors of this committee before we send it out, in case you have any input into that letter. And now that we have ability to resource any further contacts that generates, we'll be arranging for that to be posted. In addition to the information in the report, I just wanted to forewarn you, or give you the heads up, that we will be bringing the damp policy back to Housing Scrutiny Committee in the April committee cycle. We've been undertaking a voluntary self-assessment on the recommendations out of the Housing Ombudsman's damp and mould spotlight report, and we're collating that information. On one of the very first things that is evident is the recommendation to have a dedicated damp policy. So I'm in the process with the policy and performance team in writing that in line with getting it on the forward plan to bring to you in June, sorry. Other than that, I think Ren and I would be happy to take any further questions on the report.
Thank you both for that. Now, does anybody have any questions about the report, or any specific items, or generally? Oh, sorry, Sam. Sorry, Cameron. Sorry, I couldn't see you behind the screen. I have to stand up.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for the report. I just wanted some clarification on the fire risk assessment programme, because it says that the programme has been completed and a total of 2,366 actions identified. And then I was just wondering if that means that all of those actions have also been completed, because you're saying in the later table that the fire safety is 100% compliant. So have all of those actions been completed is my question, or are they still outstanding? Thank you.
Just to answer that, the compliance element would be that the requirement to comply would be to have a valid fire risk assessment. It doesn't necessarily state to have all the actions completed. So the actions identified will be subject to a programme of work to get many of these issues addressed. So the compliance element relates to the status of the risk assessment, if there's one or not. The actions in terms of the total identified is always a moving feast, and we're continually knocking those on the head. So we will see a reduction soon if I can report on the numbering of actions completed versus the ones outstanding. We have frequent meetings quarterly with heads of services and also senior management within the council to run through those actions in terms of risk reduction and how we can best reduce some of the low-hanging fruit, easy wins, but also strategize for longer term objectives to reduce some of the actions that needs a bit more investment. I hope that answers your question.
Okay. I think you wanted to ask, but you're next asking a question. Well, Diane Best, the leaseholder rep, would like a question.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a clarification for you, Lynn. You mentioned the letters that are going to be sent to tenants, and the councillors on this committee will have a sight of them first. Will that also include the tenant leaseholder representatives?
Yes, it would. That was a mistake on my part. I meant the members of the committee. So yes, certainly you will get to see them first.
Do you want to ask your question, Councillor?
Question to Lynn. Lynn, when a leak or some kind of repairs in a house has been reported, suppose it was because of leak, and then there was some kind of mold and damp in the property. So would you see it as two jobs or one job, like damp and mold, and plus a leakage in the heating system? How would you see it and how would you follow it? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. If it's a leak involved, we would address to the leak under an emergency or urgent priority, and so the time for doing that would be allocated as an emergency, and then we would follow up with dealing with the issues of mould. It quite often is a different operative that would go out or a different member of staff that will go out to address that. So quite often with the leaks, that is something that we have to attend to as an emergency, and there may not be sufficient time then to do the work that is required to deal with the mould or damp area. And we are ensuring that a surveyor goes out to inspect the issues that we're facing, rather than an operative that might not have the same level of understanding of what's causing damp and mould.
Your question, apparently?
Yeah, what is the process if a leak has been reported and that has been completed? Then would the residents have to report the dump again, or dump and mold, the mold and dump work again? Would it be a separate reporting?
If it wasn't reported at the time of the original job being reported, the operatives that are attending have the facility to report back to their supervisors in terms of there's a concern around mould. We've altered they have cards with them that they can complete that raises concern, and that can be for a number of different things. There could be safeguarding issues or concerns around domestic violence or fuel poverty, or damp and mould is now one of the causes for concern, and they have been encouraged to complete that and send it back into the office so that further action can be taken. But I would always recommend that when a tenant is phoning in for repair, that they give the full picture in terms of what the issues are, so that we can address that accordingly.
Thank you.
I'm going to be naughty, just a quick follow-up on that. If somebody's phoning in a repair and reports something like a leak, are the customer service centre who takes that, whoever's taking that call, for example, would they have a bit of training to prompt them to say, is there any evidence of damp and mould? So you are making sure that the tenant does report it.
The customer service centre does have a script that they follow, but I will ensure that that is included on the script in terms of leaks. Particularly, we work with the customer services in terms of the processes and the things that they ask on a regular basis, but I will take that one away and double check that that is something that they are asking.
Thank you. Councillor Porrer.
Thanks, Chair. It's really good to hear we're now gas and electrical compliant. Again, we've got our records, because obviously that was going to be my first two questions. So thanks to Ren and Lynn for getting that back up to scratch. I suppose you can probably imagine for the damp, mould and condensation, my concern is not with the officers. I think that's excellent to hear that even though we've got over 200, we are almost up to date with the surveys. That's really good to hear. But I think it comes back to that concern again that this is resource that we've moved from other bits of the team to cover it. So I think from our side, the concern is just obviously the impact that we're going to find that might have later, because we know that our officers are busy, so that there isn't spare capacity. And it is really welcome to see that Lynn is doing the letter to neighbouring properties. I think that's really sensible. It was part of our budget amendment suggestions to do that, because I do think, if we've got stock that's the same type, it's sensible to check. So welcome seeing that with obviously tenant reps as well. But I think for us, our concern is not with the officers per se, but also with the ruling group in terms of how they're planning to fund this continuing high demand, rightly so. And a new damp policy will increase that when we don't have any extra resources for staff for Lynn's team to do that. Thanks.
A response to that, or is it just noting?
Did you want me to?
Do you have a response you want to make to that, Lynn? Sorry.
Well, I could just add on there that we will have a better indication of resources once we've completed the self-assessment, and if we have concerns moving forward, then that's something obviously we'll pick up with the Executive Councillor for Housing and the ruling group, and put any budgetary requirements through on that. But until we've completed that piece of work, we are managing within the existing resources that we've got. Part of the work that the surveyor that's undertaken the surveys would ordinarily complete would be damp inspections that come through this time of the year. So whilst we have had an increase in the number, that is a proportion of his working time anyway.
Thank you. Any more questions? Can't see any hands up. Thank you very much. Well, we technically have to go on to the next bit, which is, because Diane, Bess and I called this in because we think it's important to have a discussion, we need to actually ask if you accept the recommendations, which are at, I'll turn to the right page. Note the progress of the service review and compliance related work detailed within the report under recommendations at 2 on page 25. Can I have all those in favour, please? Okay. Anybody against? Have you got them? You got a hand? Yeah. 9 in favour. Okay. And anybody abstaining? Or not? Yeah. 2 abstentions. Yeah. None against. Anybody against? Well, I think that counts everybody, doesn't it? Yes. Thank you very much indeed. And the Executive Council, you accept that recommendation?
I do, Chair. I just want to thank officers for the hard work they've done. So thank you, Lynn and Ren.
Okay, thank you very much. The next item is item 6, which is the HRA provisional carry forwards. And that starts on page, whatever it is of your papers, sorry. The next page, 31, I should imagine, looking at this. Thank you. And could I have Julia, please, Julia Havels, to introduce this report? Thank you, Julia.
Thank you, Chair. The Provisional Housing Revenue Account Carry Forward report is a report that members will have seen presented last year. We are presenting this report in March of every financial year with an indication of what we expect the carry forward requirements to be, to ensure that once approved, officers can continue with the delivery of those projects from April 2023 onwards. We will submit a final carry forward report in the June committee cycle with the final sums of money that are required as carry forwards once we've closed the accounts down. So the values may change, but the principle of the carry forward in these areas will remain the same. So we don't have a large number of carry forwards in the revenue aspects of this report this year. We have 6 carry forwards on the report, coming to a total of just over 440,000. A number of those are in areas where we are contractually committed to completing works that we have begun in the current financial year and are requesting permission to carry the money forward to complete those in the new financial year. And others are where we have projects that are ongoing, where in order to complete the project, the resource will need to be carried forward into the new financial year. I'm happy to take any questions on any of the specifics.
Julia, always so helpful. Anybody got any questions? Councillor Pora, anybody over here?
Thank you very much. Thanks, Julia. I just want to check the water conservation project, which I know is a kind of cross-party thing. I just wondered if officers or Exec Council could just update on where we are with that and what the delays were. Thanks very much.
Would you like me to answer that one, Julia?
Thank you, Lynn.
Yeah. The delays were involving staff resource because we had somebody leave their post in the middle of last year that was working on the project and had to have the capacity in the team and the knowledge within the team to be able to pick that up. We also had to procure the work that was being undertaken. The project, the carry forward of it is to allow the project to conclude. the work has begun on that project now that it's procured, and our net zero pilot officer is undertaken that work instead of the energy manager's role. They're currently working on calculations on our stock and our specifications, the consultants that's been employed to complete the work, and they're drawing up recommendations and visuals for a report. The officers meeting with them in 2 weeks' time to discuss the findings and the content of the report, and we expect to have an interim report in Easter, followed by a finalised report within 2 to 4 weeks after that. And we're hoping to start trialling some measures in May. So I just wanted to give you the assurance that the work is underway, has been delayed, but it is well and truly underway now.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you. Any more questions? Okay, is it a supplementary or another question? Yes?
Oh, just thanks, Lynn. That's great to hear. Will we get a report at Housing Scrutiny? Presumably, I'm thinking it's June, isn't it, on that? Because I think we'll all be quite interested in progress, if that's possible.
Because there was a note that the east of England is still in drought and things, isn't it? Yeah. I've read that very recently. One of 2 areas in the country, so we need to do something about it, or encourage people to do something about it. Thank you both. Are there any more questions? I can't see any hands up. No one's waving. Good. Okay, then. So on that basis, can I ask that I put the recommendation to the vote, and that is at 2 on page 32. You can read it. I won't read it out. So all those in favour of the recommendations?
And in favour?
Anybody against the recommendations? Anybody abstaining? There you go. So we've got a total of 11. Everybody's voted. Thank you very much. That's my bit, actually, apart from remembering to ask the Executive Councillor for Housing whether she approves the recommendations of the report.
I do, Chair, and thank you, Julia and Lynn.
Thank you. Now, this is when I hand this over to Councillor Zitalavaki. Does anyone feel the need for a comfort break, or shall we just steam on a bit? Yeah, shall we continue? It's not. We haven't been going very long. If it looks, well, I'll hand it over to you, and you can take a decision about that later.
So no break at all. Let's proceed. Okay, so now we turn to agenda item 7, a report on the proposal to deliver modular housing. Please, could the head of the Housing Development Agency introduce this item? I believe Claire Flowers to speak.
Thank you, Chair. This item builds on the previous programme. The Council's delivered modular housing for rough sleepers and the homeless in the city, and the committee here has had regular updates on that programme. A site's been identified on Hills Avenue in Queen Edith's ward, where a further 4 homes can be delivered. The difference with this is it's a different partnership. It's with an organisation called It Takes a City, who many of you will be aware of. They've got an agreement to purchase some homes from the New Meaning Foundation. These are the exact same modular homes that have been delivered in the Abbey ward at Christ Redeemer Church that many of you will have seen. It Takes a City have got a charitable arm that are going to be providing the support. So the decision here is for the council to agree that this site can be used for this, and the terms of the lease for that site to be delegated to the head of property services to agree. There's minimal cost to the council included of £25,000 to allow to cover our legal fees and any auxiliary work. The site was previously identified for housing development some time ago, but that wasn't taken forward for various reasons as outlined in the report, and it has been used locally as a community garden. Those people, the local community group linked with that garden have been informed, and there's been consultation around this proposal led by It Takes a City. I've got colleagues online, James McWilliams and David Greening from the kind of housing team that can answer any questions around the support and the need for this accommodation, and also Jacques van Viver, Programme Manager, who's been working with It Takes a City on how we could bring this forward. I'm happy to take any questions from the committee. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Robertson to speak.
We've been working on these pods for some time now, but I would quite like the housing officers to give us a reminder of what the rules are. The policy is on selection of tenants or residents, the length of time they'll be there, whether they're single occupancy, all things like that. I think it would be useful to remind ourselves of the rules which we set down originally.
You want to respond to that?
Hoping that David Greening or James McWilliams will come in here, Chair. Oh, here we are.
Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm happy to respond to some of that, Councillor Robertson, if that's all right with you, David. In the first instance, thank you. People will be resident for up to 2 years. The idea is that this provides a landing stage for people who have been homeless, but it's not seen to be their permanent home. So 2 years is the initial intended period of occupation. All are single occupancies, both the four that are under consideration at the moment and all the others. And tenant selection takes place via a panel model that involves officers from the City Council, most particularly the Housing Advice Partnership Manager, Simon Benn, chairing a meeting of the organisations, and there's now, as you've heard from Claire, 2 organisations that Jimmy's and It Takes a City that are managing these properties. The panel is made up of the people who are the support workers of the individuals who would like to be considered as candidates for the accommodation, the aforementioned Housing Advice Partnership Manager Simon Penn, and the organisation that will be doing the management, and other senior officers will be brought in as an if required, particularly if there's some additional information we want in order to satisfy ourselves that somebody is an appropriate candidate.
What about the number of people that are allowed to live there?
Oh, just one, single occupancy.
Part of the reason for the question is I gather that there is a prospect of 2-bedroom pods being developed. And I'd quite like to understand whether that is going to be something we move on to. And if so, how will their selection be then conducted? And who will be living there?
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. We have no plans as Cambridge City Council to the very best of my knowledge, to look at there being more than 2 people in one pod. They are flexible, but certainly from the sort of rough sleeper perspective, we're not looking at that. I see Jacques has come in, so there's information there which I probably don't have. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. If I can just jump in there. We are on a separate point looking at opportunities for refugee housing. And there are some larger modular homes which we are considering for that purpose, but that's a completely separate point from the rough sleeper accommodation. So those are different units and larger units looking at potential family use.
If I may. Thank you. I'm sorry to have hijacked this issue. This is an issue about some pods in the south of the city. which I welcome. I think it's a great idea to spread them around the city generally and not concentrate anywhere in particular. So I welcome that, and hopefully we'll have another successful site. So thank you. And the use of pods for Ukrainians would be normally other property, not these single person pods. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lee, please.
Hi, I just have two questions that I'd like clarification on. Firstly, in the hopefully unlikely event of antisocial behaviour, will there be kind of a support worker or a caseworker that will be point of contact for residents and ward councillors? And secondly, as was mentioned, it is currently a community garden. So what kind of guarantees will we have regarding an overall gain in biodiversity by developing these into pods? And also, are there any guarantees on the protection of the mature trees that are in this community garden? Thanks.
If I could jump in and just answer the first part of that, each individual who is allocated a modular home will have a dedicated support worker, and this is the process that we've had in place since the beginning. That's the best I can tell you about that. Thank you.
And if I can jump in on the second point, obviously it is currently a community garden. That was a short-term use that was implemented in mid-2019. Prior to that, we need to remember this was an earmarked development site. So there is a baseline there. We're looking at biodiversity, and obviously we will try and offset that. We will try and make some biodiversity net gain on adjacent sites or wherever nearby that is possible. But we need to see what is able to be done. And in terms of the trees, yes, we will aim to retain trees as far as possible on the site.
Thank you. Tenant Rep Mandy Paul Hardy, please.
My question is you keep going on about the pods and everything. I'm under the understanding by the other gent that's on there, Jim, I think his name is, that there is not a particular site for women. Now, there has been problems with women being put in with the men in those sites. So what is actually happening?
Be answering. Yeah. Thank you, James.
Thank you. We have mixed people in the sites because the sites are there on the basis of the suitability of the individuals to move into this kind of independent accommodation and need. There are no plans for a sexually segregated sites in the sense of there being a site specifically for women and a site specifically for men, because the accommodation is all self-contained. I am aware of one instance where there was a woman resident, and she was experiencing some difficulties, but I am not aware and probably am unable to discuss whether or not that was as a consequence of other people on the site. But given the degree of supervision that takes place and the aforementioned fact that each person who is on the site has got a support worker, I think it's probably going to be easier to deal with not just the situation that you mentioned, but to deal with antisocial behaviour in general because of the intensity of the supervision relative to, say, diverse council properties, flats that are spread around the city and don't necessarily have the same degree of scrutiny.
Any other questions? Yeah, question, yeah. Cameron, thank you.
Thank you very much to all the officers who have worked on this, and I think it's something we should be really proud of as a City Council, the Modular Homes programme as a whole. So thank you. I just wanted to ask about the lifespan of this project, essentially. So we've got the modular homes that have a lifespan of about 60 years. I assume this hasn't necessarily been agreed yet, but how long is the piece of land likely to be let for this purpose for?
That hasn't been agreed yet. That's got to be agreed with It Takes a City and the Head of Property Services. But what we've had on the previous sites is that obviously these do have the ability to be moved. And so if there were other plans for the site in the future, then we'd work with the partners to look at where we could move them to and use the site for an alternative use.
Vice Chair has a question.
Oh, well, first of all, I welcome Mandy's intervention because, as she knows, that I'm very involved in talking about vision for homeless women. That's number one, just mark that markers there. I just wanted to know when we might get a report back. How long have we had the pods now? It'd be really good to have an update report to saying how people are going, other issues that have come up, and also a little breakdown, how many men are in them, how many women, and how does that work? Because I do think that's important that we have a look at that to see are there any improvements, other things that we could be looking at in this sort of provision of pods. I think it is very important because I know that some places people hasn't really worked for them and they've had to go back. We need to find, is there learning from that kind of experience as well? So I would welcome the chance of a future report coming to this committee so we can look at how good they are, where there might be some things to look at. So just my observation. Thank you.
There'll be a response.
James, do you want me to pick that one up?
Yes, please, David.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Diana, for the question. I mean, I think like anything else, it's good to have a critical mass of homes so that we can have a decent assessment as to the efficacy of the project. You may be aware that, and I think it's detailed in the report, that the university have done a little bit of a interim evaluation of modular homes, only on a very, very small scale. So in order for us, I think, to add additional value to that kind of analysis, we'd need to perhaps have a few more. It's something that we'll take away, though, because we are bringing back, as you know, a report on Housing First. And although this isn't technically Housing First as such, it might be worth sort of adding our observations into that Housing First report. So we could perhaps add a little bit of an analysis on modular homes into the Housing First work. So we'll take that away, and I'll discuss it with James and possibly bring something back when we bring back the Housing First evaluation.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Sam Culling has a question.
Thank you. Yeah, and I mean, I'm also just really pleased to see this coming forward, especially as others have said in different parts of the city as well. It's good to diversify that. I just wanted to ask a little bit more about the support that's given to people to move on from pod housing and kind of where that's coming from, who's providing it, and just also, I guess, looking for a bit of reassurance that we've made sure there's enough capacity for the expansion.
Thank you. I can assure you about the capacity for the expansion because ITAC, and as Claire has outlined, this is the first time that for a project on council land that It Takes a City will be managing the accommodation. It's currently managing, ITAC is currently managing our winter provision that you may be aware of, where we have 20 people over the 5 winter months in a place called Crossways in Chesterton Road. ITAC has run that for us for the past 2 years. They also had a major part to play in managing the everyone in accommodation that you remember we provided during COVID. They have built a lot of experience in a relatively short time. They use officers who have cut the teeth, so to speak, in lots of different projects around town. So I like Jimmy's and Cyrenians and so on and so forth. So I have little doubt as to ITAC's ability to be able to manage this this properly. We will, of course, be scrutinising that throughout the life of the project, and there will be frequent opportunities for us to be able to discuss how it's going, and we will be interested to see how this particular project, which, as Claire said, is managed differently, might compare to others that we've had a direct involvement in. As regards Move On, Move On is being done by the same kind of panel arrangement as I mentioned was in existence for selecting people to come into the properties in the first place. Nobody will be expected to move if they are not ready to move within that 2-year period, and we can extend that 2-year period if necessary for some people. But equally, if people are failing in the accommodation, and we've already heard some reference to that, and it's like everything that you try with these things, people are sometimes not ready, and there are not everybody is suitable or proves themselves to be suitable. So nobody would be expected to remain in the modular homes who were not making a good go of it, or were maybe making things difficult for other people. If I just may finish by saying that one of the strengths of the modular homes project has been we have tended to run with people's own desires for what it is that they want. So generally speaking, it is a self-selected group that goes into the modular homes, to the people who want to make a go of it in the first place. Most people are very happy with them, much happier in many respects than they are in ordinary bricks and mortar property. And that happiness has tended to lead to better outcomes for people, and people more readily wanting to then take up work opportunities and other such things. And of course, once people have taken up those opportunities, it then makes it easier for them to move into mainstream housing, which is principally what we intend to do when people move on.
Thank you, James. I think I have a question, though I think you have partly touched that. The question is, when you say 2 years temporary period, especially when it comes to homeless people, of course, there are some mental health issues attached to it. So are we expecting some kind of significant change in 2 years' time, and then they move on? And if that is not the case, how do we address the situation? Thank you.
I think we are expecting some and are actually seeing some significant changes in people in that short period. As we all know, I think that a person's housing situation, our own housing situation, is the bedrock, isn't it, of how we relate to other people, about our sense of well-being, and about how well we want to relate to the rest of the world, to find work and so on and so forth. And those kinds of transformative experiences are being had by people, some quite rapidly, some, as you would expect, much more slowly and more halting. I think that, you know, what we're doing here really is we're giving people the opportunity to try something out in an environment that is the best, I think, for some people that we can possibly offer in terms of somewhere to make their home. The idea of being around, for example, other people who have been through a similar journey is that could be detrimental in some cases because people can be dragged back. But the experience appears to be generally that people, when they're with people who have got a similar experience, who may be in a different stage of their journey, will actually assist one another and help one another and encourage one another. And you know, sometimes that doesn't happen, but it has happened enough for us to think that these are it's certainly something worth pursuing further. As David mentioned, you know, we will be looking in the future at how this has worked for individuals, and there is already this study which I think you can find by looking online at the university. I think it's the land economy, but I'm the department at the university, but I'm not absolutely certain of that, where they do point up some of these things. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, but am I right in understanding that this 2 years time can be extended? There's a possibility, if need be, that would be extended. Am I correct in understanding that?
Correct.
Thank you. A question from the Vice Chair. Thank you.
Oh, just a quick thing. I mean, we might not find the right report. Is there a chance that the link to that report could be sent round to committee members? I think people would find that quite useful, as you've referred to it several times. Thank you.
Yes, it's not a question. Rather, I'd just like to say that thank you so much for all your hard work and everything that you've put in. And just to really say again that I think it's fantastic that we have increased the number of pods. I think it's a fantastic initiative. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Can we move on to voting? We now go to the vote recommendations on page number 38 of the agenda. All those in favor, please raise your hands.
Yeah, that's unanimous. In favour?
And against, I don't think it was unanimous, right? Executive Councillor for Housing approves the recommendation.
I do, Chair, and I'd also like to say a few words about the pods. If you haven't had a chance to go into one of the pods or look around, please do, because you get a good insight then how lovely they are and what grounds they've got. It's a fantastic thing, and I'd like to see them all over the city. Definitely, one big thing for me. But first of all, before I finish, I'd like to wish Jim a happy retirement as he's leaving us. And this is his last committee. And I want to thank you, Jim, for all your hard work on the homeless side. You've done a fantastic job. And I know a lot of people are going to miss you. I've known you for many years, and it's sad for me to say goodbye to you. So thank you so much, Jim, and I think you deserve a round of applause.
Councillor Bird, if it's appropriate for me to say thank you very much indeed. If the light wasn't so bad in my living room, you'd see that I'm blushing the colour of your scarf right now.
Bye-bye, Jim.
Now, can we turn to agenda item 8? Anyone? Yeah. We are live. Can we start? Yeah. Now, can we turn to agenda item 8, an update on Hanover and Prince's Court options appraisal. Please could the head of the Housing Development Agency introduce this item? I understand Claire Flowers to speak.
Well, it's fine going to be me if that's all right, Chair.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think probably the most most useful thing I can do is just sketch out a little bit about how we've got to where we are here to remind you of that, really. A lot of the technical information and the analysis is in the papers you've got, and of course we can pick all those issues up as needed. I think it's worth just reminding ourselves that this is a slightly different project to a lot of the projects we brought to you in the past. The projects we brought to you that are regeneration projects have always been a mixture of a response to the conditions of particular estates and the opportunity for additional new housing. And probably there's been a lot of weight, I think, well, not probably, there has been a lot of weight on the opportunity for additional new housing. And in this case, the weight is rather different. The weight is much more on the condition of the existing estate. There is a limited opportunity for new housing, and the conditions are the major factor. The other thing that you will recall from the decision in January 22 was that there was an opportunity, following the consultation exercise we've done at the back end of 21, to offer people the opportunity to move to the new developments that we were delivering at Mill Road and Cromwell Road. And given how limited the council stock is in the centre of the city, it was thought really important to take advantage of that opportunity. And indeed, residents have, the tenants have done exactly that in significant numbers. It's covered in the paper, the statistics, but a lot of people have moved. The parallel process with that decant is looking at what the options were. As I say, the different balance of issues here meant that this was a slightly different process to normal, or to how we have been doing it. And we looked in parallel at redevelopment options and refurbishment options. And the report in front of you sets out these 4 options. I don't think do nothing was ever really a possible or serious option. There's the retain and repair option. Can we retrofit and achieve much better standards in the properties, or should we redevelop? Those were the essential options, and we spent the first half of 22 last year, calendar year, looking at that, both those options, and we got to the point by the late summer where we had a significant degree of clarity. We didn't have final answers, but we had a significant degree of clarity about what those options might look like. And we did another consultation exercise in August, September with residents on the estate, and we did in fact invite into that process the immediate surrounding area as well. At this point, we brought in an external consultant to really pull this together and say, well, if we look at this analytically, what is the best outcome? Now, where we had got to with that is, as I said, we've got quite a lot of information about refurbishment options, still some uncertainties about what could and couldn't be done, but really quite a lot of information about that. Equally, we've got quite a lot of information about what the development options might be, but not a final answer. We had a couple of schemes. That the major issue between the 2 schemes was the retention of 3 plane trees on the site, which is still an unresolved issue. Obviously, there's room for quite different views and potentially quite strong views about that. But the further investigation of all of these options was going to cost significant sums of money. And so it seemed sensible to review the best way forward on the basis of what we had. And that meant really asking the question in a certain way, if we could only do the limited option, which, as the scheme we had it, that had a reasonably favourable response in pre-application discussions with the planners, was 138 homes, which retained the 3 trees. If that was what we were limited to, would we still think that redevelopment was the right way to go, or would we think actually that would tip us back to thinking refurbishment was the right approach? And so the redevelopment option retained a kind of level of flexibility as between the number of units on the site, and this will impact through the financial planning in particular what the tenure balance we can afford to deliver on the site is. So that's how we then approached it. And I'll come back to those points in a moment. What Jones Lang-LaSalle looked at was a kind of strategic analysis against the council's policies and identified critical success factors, what the council want to achieve and how well would any of these different options achieve that. This isn't the order in the report because I want to come back to the financial point. They looked at the economic case for doing this and in terms of a cost-benefit analysis, and then they looked at the financial viability. And when they looked at the financial viability, they looked at what does the outcome look like if we're on 40%, what does it look like if we're on 60%? Does that make a difference to where we think we would need to be in terms of what the recommendation should be? I should also say that because of the quite correct growing concern about this issue, we looked at the life cycle carbon of the options, both the development carbon impacts and the in-use carbon impacts, and that's part of the analysis too. And in fact, the outcome of all this work is reasonably clear. Well, it's very clear, really. The critical success factors, the strategic issue points towards redevelopment. The cost-benefit analysis in relation to the economic element points towards redevelopment, and the financial appraisal on either option points towards redevelopment, which is why the decision you are invited to take is that we should pursue the redevelopment option. We will then have to return to the discussion we essentially paused with the planners about how many units we can get onto the site, and that will impact, along with other things that change in the market, like build costs and market values. We will have to assess, again, as time progresses, what we can afford to do in terms of the tenure balance. And that's why we're looking towards a degree of flexibility about that as to where we think that can land. Clearly, we understand very well that the objective of the council is to maximise the delivery of affordable housing, particularly council rented housing. But there are quite a lot of considerations to work through, and we have to look, as we do all the time, at the impact on the whole of the programme of any particular project. We don't at all on any of the schemes look at schemes in isolation. I mean, we do look at them obviously as to how they stack up in terms of appraisals, but then we have to look at how they sit within our overall housing revenue account and our housing programme. And that's what we will do here. So if you approve this recommendation, the recommendations are in front of you now, you're saying, well, press on and do the redevelopment work, start the process of speaking to the residents in a somewhat different way. We've been saying to them, up till now, you have the option of moving. We would be now saying to them much more, well, you know, at some point in the near future, you are going to have to move, and we're going to work with you about how we can do that. But that's a shift, clearly. We touched on that earlier in response to the question. And we would return to the question of what scheme we can deliver on this site, how many homes can we deliver on the site, how can we accommodate all the different pressures and issues around that, the conservation area, the biodiversity issue, the open space issue, the tree issue. There's always a lot of pressures on these things. How we can do that, and then to bring forward a scheme in accordance with this recommendation that you're asked to pass today. Thank you.
I believe Councillor Richard Robertson has a question to ask.
The first question I've got is to do with the present position of who's living there, what category of people are living there at the moment. On page 71, we've got the table as it was in the middle of November last year. So that's some months ago. Are the figures must have changed a bit since then. So I'd be quite interested to know what the position now is. So I can ask that question first.
Yes. So the tenants moving or in process of moving out of the 82 tenancies there were at the start of this process is now on 55. I think I can say we think quite a lot of the tenants who haven't moved are people probably who need quite a lot of help and support to move. I don't want to generalise too much about that, but we do recognise that's an important need in terms of the complexities and logistics of moving. That's the tenant side of it. Of the leaseholders side of it, 45 of those and 22 are somewhere in the process of moving. Most of them well advanced with moving. There are 13 that are now returned to us, and another 8 where the surrender instruction has been received. So we're about halfway there with the leaseholders, and about half of those remaining are resident leaseholders of the kind we discussed earlier. So that's and we covered. I don't really need to repeat what I said earlier.
Thank you.
My other question is to do with the recommendation 4. Recommendation 4 is an open-ended question, recommendation. In the, it could be 60% affordable, it could be 40%, and as as the officers explained, to some extent, we don't know at this stage where it's going to end up. I certainly think we would want to see as many as possible as being affordable and staying under council stock. And I think when I looked at the table in the options on, sorry, not the options, the analysis page. I've lost it now, but there's an interesting analysis of loads of figures, but it does demonstrate that there's quite a lot of flexibility But I mean, what are the chances at the moment? Is there any knowledge you've got at the moment that can tell us which way it's likely to end up?
I think there are a number of factors that we're going to work through, and so it's probably if we consider the scheme in isolation, I think it would probably finish up somewhere between the two, is most likely. I think there is some reason to think we could push the number of units on the overall site up from 138 from the final discussions we had before we kind of paused the process with the planners. They kind of looked at the 165, 138 thing and they were not happy about the 165 for various reasons, but they said, you know, we would have a look at this and see what we could do, whether it can be a bit more than 138, so that's one factor. I mentioned earlier there are a number of things that would bear on what the balance would be, that in terms of costs, standards, values when we do sell homes and so on, and they'll all bear on that. I would expect that the answer to be somewhere between the two, to be honest. It's worth pointing, just reminding 60% is not an entire, it's a fluke really that 60%, which is a round number, happens to give you on a 138 scheme 82, that is what we had at the beginning. It's just happened to work out like that. I think we'll be somewhere between the two.
Thank you. So the table I was looking for was on page 94, if anybody really wants to look at it. There's massive figures, but anyway, it's quite interesting to see the variety of possibilities. So I think we'll just have to, the recommendation is that to let the officers get on with it and we report and work with the Executive Councillor on the issue. And in due course, I hope we will be informed what we've ended up with as the best solution. But I'm certainly happy with the idea that we don't try and use the existing building. It's always was a bit of an odd design, and I think a new building would have a much better option for energy efficiency, apart from anything else. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I think Vice Chair has a question.
I've got just a bit of anecdotal stuff and a question, I suppose, as well. My interest is that I'm declaring an interest. I used to be a tenant at Hanover and Princess Court, and I think that's quite important because I've seen it from all sides. First of all, I did move over to the ironworks site, and I think it was a great move. First of all, I don't know if it's appropriate to do it here, I don't know what else to say, is to commend the support from the officers in helping people move, and they have gone well beyond their brief, I think, to help people to move, particularly one particular individual who had been a resident in the flats since they were built, and she's now safely settled in a property on ironworks, and she's over the moon. But it took a lot of persuasion, a lot of help, and a lot of hand-holding. Now, I think that may be the case with some of the remaining tenants. I want to say thank the officers for that. I think it's important. I think we were well informed, as best as you could in the circumstances. It's quite a complex thing to get across. So I sort of commend the consultation. I think Diane might add something in a little while. And I would also want to say that as an ex-tenant, I would obviously love to see the maximum number of council properties that we can squeeze out of that site. Yes, the property, architecturally speaking, it's a challenge, as it is at the moment, and it was, in fact, included in a book called Ugly Buildings of Cambridge, if I remember. So that's just an observation. It doesn't, as it is, in many ways, fit into a conservation area because all the rest of the stuff is original buildings that were built in the early to mid 1800s. So, you know, it's quite a contrast in many ways, yes? I just point that. And also, take the point that you live in a place, I lived there, my property for almost 23 years, and you live there and you think you put up with it all, don't you? Make the compromises. But having taken everything out and looked at the flat and gone to a new place, I realised how many compromises we did all make living there, yeah? The fact that you knew that something didn't work very well, you put up with it. In many ways, you shouldn't have to put up with it. It wasn't resolvable. It needed a much deeper intervention. So that's kind of a statement, an observation. So thanking what happened and look forward to seeing as many properties as we we can on the site. And I know that isn't really a question, but I do think it's important to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Councillor Porer has a question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, actually, to echo what the Vice Chair was saying, thank you to officers for their work with this. You know, I have to say, it's, as far as I'm concerned, as ward councillor, you know, we've had positive feedback. We've had a lot of communication with either ward councillors, with tenants, with representatives, I hope. So that's very welcome. And I think, you know, the report is comprehensive and it's fairly clear that redevelopment is not, well, as in keeping it standing, but retrofitting is really not, a good use of the HRA, but also not good for the tenants because those flats will never be able to achieve a high enough rating. I think what I really want to pick on was exactly what Councillor Robertson picked up on. I'm a little uncomfortable, I suppose, about the recommendation 2.4 because it's quite a sweeping thing. So we've modelled it at 40 because that's a local plan standard, obviously. We couldn't go below that even if we wanted to, and we won't. But my understanding is we've budgeted for 82 new council apartments, so it matches. Obviously, there are things like costs are going up, we know that. Personally, I would prefer it to come back to some kind of scrutiny before that decision is made. I'm not actually making this as a political point because I'm kind of making the assumption that we're all on the same page here. But I suppose what I'm saying is if, for example, we had to drop it to, I don't know, pick a 75, I think this committee, or certainly if we're in election period of chair, vice chair, spokes kind of thing, it would be a benefit for us to at least be able to review why we can't go more. It may well be that it's too expensive from the HRA to do that, and I understand that. I've discussed it with Julia, who very kindly has worked through some of the figures. But I suppose for me, the decision today is to take it down and rebuild. I'm comfortable supporting that, and I think the tenants have said the same and residents. But I'm a little uncomfortable with this kind of blanket assumption because for some of the other sites we've had, I think recently, we were waiting on money coming in, so we might have got $1 million from Homes England. This development, as it stands, won't qualify because it's not extra, is it? We're replacing like for like. So we know the money in our budget at the moment is pretty much what we're going to get. So I wonder if, I don't know if the exec council or officers would agree for some kind of review. I appreciate we need to move reasonably quickly because it's got to go to planning at some point. But actually the agreement with the KIP and stuff, I assume, would come a little bit later. And I would just like to have some chance for us, Councillor Bird, myself and the committee to just look at if we drop below 82, why we're doing it, and maybe just check the finances to make sure that we can scrutinise that together, because I think we're all aligned in wanting as many council houses. So I wonder if the exec council would agree to sort of bring it back, or if you can't bring it back before June, because I know we need to move quickly, because I know my residents in the flats and also round would like a decision soon and would need to, people want to know what's going on. I don't know if that would be something we could do, because I just feel there's two separate decisions here. One is let's go with the rebuild. The second is how many council properties we get in there. Thanks. And also I should just say, again, I'm sure we will, but obviously can we make sure we consult the residents nearby? Because as you probably all know, it's a really constrained site there. And if any construction work in that area is obviously going to have an effect. So the more we can involve residents in Market Ward and around there would be much appreciated.
If I could just make a couple of comments on that, because obviously it's... Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Porra. I think you've pointed out quite rightly the balance between time and issues on this now. And as you're aware, the team will always do everything they can to ensure that ward councillors are kept up to date, for example, with things going on. In looking at recommendation 4, I think, and in all of the information that's been laid out about the scale and scope of any decision which might vary under that, I think it will be very much a balance between all of the things that we take into account. And a lot of those potential options are laid out in the JLL report. I hope that given the reputation and the work that goes on with all the other things, that the team can be trusted to do the absolute best to achieve the most council rented homes it can be. However, what perhaps I would say is that perhaps instead of bringing it back to committee, it would be reasonable to take recommendation forward to include director, exec councillor and spokes within any conversation and information that's given out around any proposal that's deemed to be the final one being taken forward, if the exec council is happy with that.
Oh, yeah. No, I think that's it. I don't think we're going to differ on this, Councillor Burden. I just think it's important in terms of scrutiny that the decision sort of comes through the elected reps as well, because I know officers will do their best, obviously, but if there's anything we can do to help, it would be good. So, yeah, I'd be grateful if that was the case. Thanks. Councillor Burden, Fiona.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yeah, oh, sorry. Diane West, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Mine's not a question, it's a couple of comments. From the tenant leaseholder representative point of view, it's all been very well managed, and in particular, the setting up of the consultation working group involving us representatives has been extremely valuable, because we've had the opportunity to look at the materials that were being sent to the tenants and leaseholders, to make suggestions about appropriate language, who contact people were, and so on. And that really is an example of very good practice. One slightly negative comment is the length of time that all this takes. And picking up that was raised by the public speaker at the beginning, I think we need together to work together to see how we can, in a way, soften the blow of the time that it might take. And I think that's been the main minus of the whole thing.
You want to respond to that? Yes. Any other questions? Oh, thank you. Councillor Lee, please.
Yeah, given the cost to the council and the HRA of the unit sitting empty and thus being void, do we have a time frame for commencing compulsory purchase orders?
Yes, well, we have a time frame written into the regeneration policy, which is 3 months post a decision, so that would follow. I think that is a kind of benchmark approach, and obviously we have to look at the particular situation with each case, actually, in terms of each individual who has to be considered properly in relation to the compulsory purchase order. But that's what's in the policy.
Any other questions? Now, are there anything more to add, Claire Flowers? Do you want to add anything more? No, thank you. Now, I understand the recommendations are from 2.1 to 2.6. Are the members happy to take all in one block or individual?
Adding spokes to 2.4, then do we need to do that, or are you?
Amendment is this, on 2.4, authorize the strategic director in consultation with the executive councillors and chair for the housing to approve, sorry? Executive Council of Housing and Chair and spoke for housing to approve the variations to the affordable housing unit to be purchased, including the number of the units and mix of property types, size and tenure. Will we have a vote on this? Yeah.
Sorry, all those in favour
Oh,
of that amendment? Sorry, so that's unanimous, thank you.
taking the rest in one block. Okay. So are we all putting recommendation 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, and 2.5, and 2.6? And 2.4, sorry. As amended, yeah. Thank you. In support of this?
So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Any objection? Sorry, against, sorry. And abstention? Thank you.
1 abstention.
Executive Council for Housing approved the recommendation?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Now we turn to agenda item 9, update on new build housing, council housing delivery. Please could the head of the Housing Development Agency introduce this item? I understand Claire Flowers to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is the report that we bring to each committee to update you on the overall housing delivery programme. Across the programme, we now have 592 homes that have been completed across 15 sites and 490 homes on site. So a significant programme of over 1,000 homes either completed or on site. Since we last reported in January, we've had handover of the residential block at the Meadows and also homes at Colville Road in Cherry Hinton. We've also handed over the last residential homes at Mill Road, with the community centre finished now and due to hand over this month. The report, in addition to the usual update, includes an update on the programme to support housing for refugees and an update that the Memorandum of Understanding to secure that funding from DULUC has now been signed, and the team will be working on delivering that programme. The report also includes updates on accessible housing and sustainability as normal, as well as risks to the programme. I'm pleased to also say that last night the programme secured some awards at the Greater Cambridge Design and Construction Awards, with the Mill Road Ironworks scheme winning Best Neighbourhood, and Hill, our partner contractor, getting Contractor of the Year for their work on the ironworks and Colville Road, and also one of the individuals on our KIP team securing Young Professional of the Year. So it was really great to have that recognition of the places that have been developed through this housing programme and the homes and facilities that we've been delivering. I'm happy to answer any questions that committee members have on the overall programme. Thank you.
Are there any questions?
thank you. Just a comment to make. I just wanted to say thank you very much. I really welcome the provision of housing for refugees from Afghanistan and Ukraine. And I think that's particularly important at a time when we've got Prime Minister and Home Secretary who are demonising refugees with far-right rhetoric. So thank you very much for that. It's really important that we as a city continue to welcome refugees regardless of where they're from. And I think it's also good to see that there is a part of the government, at least, that is taking a more compassionate and pragmatic approach in the way that they're funding housing and support for people who are fleeing war or natural disaster or persecution. So thank you very much for that.
Pura.
Yes, also congratulations on the awards. It's good to hear. And again, for the government money that we did get for the refugee housing. So I know that was a bid officers put in, so that's great. And I know we covered that as an urgent decision previously. Just two very minor questions. Just want to check the Mill Road handover. We've got the defect period. I just want to check how long that was and when they will be officially signed off to us. And just to confirm the theft that's referenced for the Mews, I gather that didn't have any impact on the HRA because it wasn't anything to do with us because it's a separate set of houses we're buying in. But just to confirm that, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pora. We have a 12-month defect period for our properties, and also we have a 12-year NHBC build mark guarantee as well. So if there's anything that we need to go back on, we can use that. And that's correct. On the Mews Histon Road, we're paying when they finish those homes, so it doesn't affect anything that the HRA is paying. Thank you.
Any other questions? Could you give us an update about St. Thomas Road scheme? Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor, could you repeat that?
St. Thomas Road scheme.
Yes, we are reviewing the feedback that we had from residents and also from planners around how we can deliver the housing and also the open space on that site and some other sites adjacent to it. And so we are really kind of re-engaging with that project team and looking to see how we can adapt the proposals. But we are still looking to see if we can deliver that as a net zero scheme.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? So we will now go to the vote. Recommendations on page 104 of the agenda. All those in favour, please raise your hands.
Yeah, that's unanimous in favour.
Unanimous? Yeah. Does the Executive Council of Housing approve this recommendation?
I do, Chair, and I just want to congratulate all the guys for getting the awards, and I think you all deserve a round of applause for the awards we've done. Well done.
That is the end of the agenda item, but we have AOB, where Executive Councillor Jerry Bird to speak. Oh, yeah.
Thank you very much, Chair. Sorry to keep you for a little bit longer, but I'd like to take this opportunity. This is actually Claire's last committee. For those of you who don't know, Claire has been awarded another role. She's going to work in Birmingham as an assistant director, overseeing probably an even bigger programme there. And I'd just like to take this opportunity, and I know Councillor Bird will be following me up, to say a massive thanks to her and her team for what they've achieved. I think those of you who were here 5 years ago when I came in might remember that we had, the City Council been lucky enough to win the devolution funding at that point. There was a fledgling partnership perhaps had been agreed, but effectively there were no sites in a position to be delivering then. We did a lot of work in the first year, but it was still very much, we had a couple of big sites coming forward, but there was still a huge amount of work to do. And in the time that after Claire joined, in the time she's been, there's no doubt that the partnership has been built into the reputation of one of the best, if not the leading district council in the country, according to Homes England. She's built the team into a high-performing team. She has absolutely ensured an attention to detail, which I think most of us would probably dream of. We wish we could clone her, but I think we also wish her all the best in her new role. Councillor Baird.
Councillor Baird, please.
Thank you, and thank you for that, Fiona. I really want to thank you as well, Claire. I've known you for many, many years when we first did the Water Lane, yeah, Jollyford Court, and that was a game, that one. And the City Council's gone from strength to strength with the housing, and it's all to do with you as well, and your group, of course, but you're the main one, all right? And I'm just over the moon how many accessible homes as well we've achieved in this time of our building. It's gone up and up. So more people can live independently. So remember that. So a really big thank you, and I know I'm going to miss you. So thank you very much.
Councillor Robertson is to be.
Yes, Claire. I had the honour of being the finance exec on the KIP board when it was first set up, before Claire got there. And it was struggling, it really was, I think. You know, poor Alan died on us, which was entirely unfortunate. But I think the success of KIP has been largely to do with being able to work with the builder. And that is largely down to Claire being accepted by the builder and having the professionalism and the experience that we needed to demonstrate to make sure they treated us seriously, and they have done. And I think a lot of that's down to Claire's abilities and her experience she brought with her. So I thank you very much. I'm sure we all do.
Thank you. That now concludes the Housing Scrutiny Committee. Please, could I ask everyone to exit the building via the Peace Hill staircase door, and that people take their own rubbish home, and if anyone has used any glasses, please could they return them to the red trays outside the committee room number 1. And please could the meeting producer now end the live stream.